you put comments in the chat. We'll do our best to get back to you. If there's any queries very specific to individual businesses, it might be the case that we haven't got time to answer it today and may come back to you at a later date. At the end of the presentation, I'll put all of our contact details and our general email address, which you can contact us on if you do want to discuss or clarify any particular issues. So if you make a note of that at the end of the presentation, and we can catch up with you afterwards and see how best we can help. So the aims of today's session is really it's an information update and a bit of a recap on what we all need to be thinking about and doing in relation to allergen information. Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide certificates out for the session to businesses. As I say, it is an information update rather than official training. However, I've recognised a few friendly names, friendly faces from other enforcement authorities, environmental health, trading standards on the session today. So if you want to record an hour CPD for your records, that's absolutely fine. But as I say, the session is aimed at businesses. I've tried to keep it quite generic as we've got quite a width and breadth of trade sectors and sizes of businesses on the call today. So I hope that you find this useful and are able to take something away from today. So, as I say, I saw on the list there's a few people on the call that are from a bit further afield than Cumbria. So I thought I'd just do a quick introduction. Obviously, Cumbria, we're famous for the Lake District. We've got a population of just under 500,000, about just under 24,000 businesses, and quite a heavy tourist industry, about 45 million visitors a year. That's a lot of scope for a lot of food businesses of all shapes and sizes. And as I say, that's why Cumbria Trading Standards, we wanted to put this session on today with Better Business for All to try help prepare you for the 1st of October and give you a bit of information on the current allergen legislation to aid and assist you with your compliance. So Cumbria Trading Standards, there's 13 of us in total. 7 of us are food officers. We focus on food standards. I'll come on to that in a minute. And we have 4 different office locations in Cumbria. So we've got Carlisle, which is where I'm based, Kendal, which is where Stuart is based, and then we've got offices also in Workington and Barrow. We work in partnership with the 6 district councils within Cumbria, so that's 6 different environmental health teams. And as I say, we're responsible for 80 parliamentary acts, which is over 2,000 pieces of legislation. So as I'm sure you can imagine, we are quite busy. So trading standards, we cover food standards. We're a 2-tier authority. What that means is that food businesses, you'll have involvement with your local environmental health team that look at food hygiene, and also with trading standards for food standards. Food standards, what does that cover? That covers obviously allergens, which is the main reason we're here today. Also covers labelling, descriptions of food, food fraud, counterfeiting, the composition of food and what should and shouldn't be in individual items. As well as adulteration of products and substitution, along with many more things in between. Obviously, we're here today to talk about allergens, and that's what I will be focusing on today. But I thought it was just useful to give you a quick rundown of the types of areas of food law that trading standards are involved in. And that's obviously through our business advice, complaint investigation, sampling, and projects that we do throughout the year. So way back in 2011, we were given the European Food Information to Consumers regulation, which from that we were provided with the Food Information Regulations 2014. We've been working hard in the last few years, well since 2014, to help businesses understand the requirements placed on them for allergen compliance to make sure that the food that they're serving is safe to consumers. The regulations made 2 criminal offences, and they were first of all for selling food past a use-by date, and for failing to provide accurate allergen information on request. There's a lot more information, particularly in the regulations. I could do a full day's course on that, but we're going to cherry pick out the bits in relation to Natashas Law today. The regulations were amended in relation to Brexit in 2019, and the focus for today is the Food Information Amendment England Regulations 2019. And this is where the legal basis of what we refer to as Natashas Law comes from ahead. So we're getting ready for the 1st of October. The regulations, as I say, we talk about allergens and being able to give allergen information, and I'm sure that you'll have all come across these yourselves in your own businesses as customers and other businesses. But the regulations stipulate 14 allergens that the law says that you have to, as a food business, you need to be able to give accurate allergen information on request. The 14: peanuts, otherwise known as ground nuts; nuts as a category, that there are specified nuts within that; crustaceans, mollusks, fish, eggs, milk; the cereal containing gluten, rather than just stating gluten itself; soya, sesame seed, celery, mustard, lupin, and sulfur dioxide, otherwise known as sulfites. They're the 14 that we're focusing on today. However, there are some additional common allergens such as to strawberries, kiwi, coconut, etc. And I think the message you need to take from today is that any allergen request from a consumer needs to be treated with the equal severity and importance. At the end of the day, we're thinking about safety here. So when I was doing the research for this presentation, it was quite interesting to see that the current statistics is that there is about 1 in 4 individuals at the moment living with a food allergy or intolerance within the UK. And of that, obviously there's a whole range of the severity of any reactions or intolerances, from very mild symptoms and intolerances right through to more serious anaphylactic shock. And I thought it was quite important today to focus our minds and think about, why are we talking about allergens? What is the main purpose of the legislation, and why we're putting so much focus on this at the moment? So I thought it was quite useful to remind ourselves of this. And on the screen at the moment, we've got a number of young persons. So in the top left, we have Owen Carey. You might remember the coverage in the press from his order of a buttermilk burger, in which very sadly he passed away, as the menu didn't refer to buttermilk in the ingredients or in the description of the food. At the bottom left, we've got Nick Kelly, 16. It was undeclared peanuts within the takeaway that he consumed. Top right was Karen Bar Singh, who's 13. This wasn't the sale. This wasn't the sale of food, but I just wanted to highlight his case as to the severity of contact with allergen for someone that does live with an allergen or intolerance. This was a situation where classmates threw cheese down his t-shirt at school, and the contact with the cheese was enough to sadly put him in hospital, and he very sadly lost his life as a result of that. At the bottom right, we have Ruben Vasquez, 14, who's 14. He went to a cinema with friends and ordered some popcorn, and it was cross-contamination with milk on the popcorn that caused him to lose his life. In the top centre, we have Megan Lee, a 15-year-old girl from Lancashire, who, despite telling the food business about her food allergies, was served a meal that contained a substance that she was allergic to, peanuts, and she died later that evening. At the bottom centre is Natasha Ednan Laperouse, 15. Natasha is obviously the centre of Natashas Law, but I thought it was important that we remembered that it's about all of these young lives and all the lives across the UK that have been lost in relation to food allergies and intolerances, and that at the end of the day, we are all here to make sure that the food that is served is safe for consumers and that they can rely on the information that's provided to them through labelling and descriptions, because one life lost is too many for something that we can all focus our minds and try and get right. So I thought it was quite useful as a starting point to understand that there are 3 different types of food labelling, and it's quite important to understand the difference between them, because how you provide your allergen information will differ depending on which category the food that you serve or sell or manufacture from your business falls into. I appreciate we've got a wide range of different food businesses on the call today, so I wanted to try and cover a little bit about each 3. Now, it will be quite a brief overview. As I say, I could do a full training course on each one. More than happy to go into more detail if you want to contact us out of the presentation. We'll put our email address up at the end. So we've got 3 different types of labelling. We've got on the left-hand side, we've got pre-packed food. Disclaimer, other supermarkets are available from that image. The best way to describe this is these are foods that are being made by one party and sold by a third party. So the person that's making the food has no direct interaction with the customer that's buying the food, and they're solely dependent on the labelling that's on there. Supermarkets is a good example of that, and food that's being sold by distance means over telephone or via the internet. I'll explain a little bit about what the requirements are for pre-packed products are, but the point to take away at the moment is that there's a heavier burden in relation to the labelling. There's a lot more information required on pre-packed foods than the others. On the right-hand side of the page, the screen, we have the other end of the scale, which is the non-pre-packed or the loose foods. So that's anything that's not been put in any kind of packaging, cafes, takeaways, restaurants, deli counters where the items are loose in the counter before ordering. And the labelling and allergen requirements for them are different from the pre-packed, and we'll go into that in a minute. And then in the middle, we've got pre-packed for direct sale, often abbreviated to PPDS. Pre-packed for direct sale is the one that has probably raised a lot more questions in the last few years and is the subject for the Natashas Law, the 2019 regulations, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So pre-packed food labelling, as I say, this is the situation where the food is away from the person that's made it and the consumer is completely reliant on the information on there. The Food Information Regulations 2014, referring back to the European 2011 regs, give a list of what we call mandatory particulars, and it's a list of the information that pre-packed food needs to have on the label. It's important to explain that pre-packed food means that it's been placed in a package that's wholly or fully enclosed, and that the food can't be accessed without tampering with the packaging, and that's before it's sold to the consumer. So that's the definition for pre-packed. And a lot of it does come across as common sense, but there's a few things that do take a little bit more information. Like I say, can do a full session on pre-packed labelling, as I'm sure my colleagues across the country would agree. So I thought it'd be useful just to do a quick rundown of what the amount of labelling that would be required on pre-packed. So it sounds quite obvious, but the name of the food. There's a few things with names of food that we need to be aware of. Some names, such as sausages, burgers, are what we call reserved descriptions, and they've got to meet certain compositional requirements before you can put a certain name on a food. So it's always worthwhile thinking about what the food is and checking whether there's any additional requirements in relation to the name. They also need to have a list of ingredients, which is headed with the word ingredients and is listed in what we call descending order of weight. So the most ingredient within that product is at the top of the list, and the pinch of salt at the end for flavouring is at the end. On pre-packed, any of the 14 allergens that are previously mentioned need to be listed on the packaging, and they need to be put within the ingredients list at their appropriate place. you'll often see a statement as well that says underneath for allergen ingredients, please see ingredients listed in bold. We're coming to a slightly niche one here, the quantity of certain ingredients, otherwise known as QUID. This is about making sure that you're not misleading consumers in any way. And the best description I can give is if you are emphasising the name of an ingredient within the name of the food or via pictures, graphics. So, for example, a ham and tomato sandwich, you would need to put the percentage of ham and the percentage of tomato within the ingredients list so the consumer knows how much of each of those emphasised, the prominent ingredients, is within that product. The net quantity, so how much of the food are you getting? Use by, best before date, any storage conditions, name and address of the food business operator. That can also include produced for example, like with your supermarkets or a brand name, etc. Your country of origin, if otherwise it would mislead, and there has been some recent changes in relation to country of origin. Instructions for use, if you're supplying alcohol, labelling alcohol and the strength of the alcohol, and your nutritional declaration. However, there is an exemption for small and local businesses. As I say, I can go into a lot more detail on that, but I just wanted to give a brief overview today of that's the main ingredient, the main parts of the labelling required on pre-packed food. Now, when you compare that to non-pre-packed or loose foods, that's like I say, your cafes, your bakery counters, where there's no packaging, you select your item loose. The legislation significantly reduces the amount of information that has to be labelled or provided. That's, in a nutshell, it is the food business operator needs to provide the name of the food and the allergen information. Now, the regulations don't say how you do this, so it's completely up to the food business operator what method you use. And when we're out doing our inspections and talking to businesses, we've seen a whole vast array of different approaches to this. We've seen menus, we've seen shelf talkers, we've seen little cocktail stick flag labels. We've seen lots, especially it's very interesting when there's quite a large number of items on a menu. We've seen various keys and symbols and graphics. But like I say, the main thing is that you have to use whatever system works for your business. As long as in this situation you're providing the name of the food and you can provide accurate allergen information, how you do that is your call. What we find to be the most common, other than, as I say, a menu, like we can see on the image there, we've got the name egg sandwich and then the ingredients, the allergenic ingredients listed below. In addition to that is verbally providing the information verbally to customers, and that's the loose, non-pre-packed food. That's absolutely fine. It does raise some questions though on how do you ensure that information is accurate and up to date. And that all comes down as part of your allergen management system and how you choose to communicate that information on your premises. In those situations, you'll probably see a sign, this one's actually from the Food Standards Agency, inviting customers to speak to a member of staff about allergenic ingredients or any allergen intolerance requests for information at the time of ordering. When I was doing the research for the presentation, it was quite interesting to see a statistic that said that 1 in 10 teenagers in the UK that live with an allergy or intolerance hide their allergy or intolerance when they're out eating for a meal. I don't know quite why, but the main thing is it's about communication, firstly from the business to the consumers to make sure that you can provide that accurate allergen information. But equally, there is a responsibility on the consumer to make you aware of any allergen intolerance requirements. At the end of the day, businesses aren't mind readers, and if you don't know that a consumer has a particular requirement, then, as I say, it's a two-way dialogue that needs to happen. So signs like these can reassure consumers that it's okay to ask about allergens, and can also help to instill confidence in that the business is taking allergen information seriously and that are willing to engage and have that communication with the customer to provide that information. Often what we'll see in loose food situations, pubs, cafes, is that there will either be what we call an allergen folder, Allergen Matrix, which I'll show you a copy of later, in which a exercise has taken place to look at each individual dish on a menu and identify the allergens within that dish. That information is stored in a folder on an allergen matrix or in some electronic format where all staff know where to find that. It's regularly kept up to date and it's a one-stop shop for the allergen information between the kitchen and the front of house staff that are having the direct contact with the consumer. Communication, as I say, is key. Some businesses in that situation choose to have a designated manager that handle any requests for allergen or intolerance requests from consumers or direct conversation with the kitchen or the chef. But the main thing is making sure that all staff on premises and that in a loose food situation know where to find the allergen information, what your process is for your premises, and ensure that that communication is accurate and delivered appropriately. So the big question of the day, what is pre-packed for direct sale? This is pre-packed for direct sale that falls between pre-packed and the non-pre-packed loose. So we've seen that the pre-packed food has quite a wealth of information to be required on a food label, and with the loose food it's just the name and the allergens that can be given verbally. Pre-packed for direct sale kind of falls in between that camp. Currently, as it stands today, it's only required, like loose food, for the name of the food and the allergenic ingredients to be listed on pre-packed for direct sale. We'll come on to why that's a problem, but we need to understand first what pre-packed for direct sale is. So pre-packed for direct sale food is food which has been packaged at the same place as where it's been offered or sold to the consumer, and that it's been put into that packaging before the consumer has ordered or collected it. So what that can mean is that it could be food that's been packaged in the morning and put into a display cabinet on a food premises where the customer can go in and select it and buy it as if it was a pre-packed product off the shelf. It's already been put in that packaging before the order's taken place, or it could be in a display cabinet at the food counter. Includes foods that's been sold at temporary premises as well. So if you're a business and you put your food into your packaging, but you want to sell it from the market stall or a mobile van or marquees, then that would also fall within your pre-packed for direct sale definition. Also includes where you might have the same business but on different premises. So chains, for example, high street bakery chains where the product is made in the morning, for example, it might be baked off in the morning, or sandwiches made up, put into the appropriate packaging, placed on the shelf, and then say consumers can get that straight from the shelf instead, as opposed to going in and ordering the sandwich and it being made up there and then for you. The key question is, was it packed before that sale took place? If it's not packaged, it's not pre-packed for direct food. If it's not packaged before it's ordered, it isn't. And also distance selling, online telephone calls would not fall under pre-packed for direct sale. So that's quite a lot to get your head around. I think the best way to look at it is with some examples. So as I mentioned, sandwich and bakeries, they go into shop in the morning, they know it's going to be a busy day, so decide to make up a batch of sandwiches, put them in the triangle cartons, put them on the shelves and stick a label on it for customers to walk in, pick it up, grab and go type food. Supermarkets also have examples of this. They have the in-store bakeries. So an example would be your freshly made cookies that they make in the morning or throughout the day. They put them into the paper bags, as you can see on the top left of the screen. They put a label over the top of the joint to seal it with the name and the allergen information on. But effectively, the customer doesn't go up to the bakery to speak with a member of staff from the bakery to order that food. They will pick it up on the shelf. Similarly, you might have the same with a pizza counter, or if a deli or a butcher's, if you've got your burgers in the butcher's or cheese that's been pre-cut in the morning and packaged and displayed in your display cabinet, that it's ready to go and has already been pre-packed, as opposed to being cut at the time of order and placed in packaging then. The Food Standards Agency came up with a flowchart to try and help explain, to help businesses understand whether something would be classed as pre-packed or not. And as I say, the key questions here would be, does the consumer choose or order the food in person at the premises? Is it presented to the consumer in packaging? Is it packaged before the consumer selects or order it? And is the food packaged at the same place or at your market stall, your vehicle, etc., where it's sold? If it is, answer to all of those is yes, then it will be classed as pre-packed for direct sale, and you need to follow the new rules under Natashas Law. So I've said that we put the name of the food on pre-packed for direct sale. I've said that we put the allergen information on there. So why is it a problem? The allergen information's there. It's a question I often get asked. The problem with this is that sometimes the labels aren't always clear. The information can be misleading depending on where it's been positioned on the product. Sometimes the allergen information is incorrectly displayed. There's human error, labelling errors. Ingredients might have been named, but not the allergen within them. So that's thinking about things like compound ingredients where, for example, you've bought an item in to an ingredient in from a third party as part of your food, but that ingredient's made up of lots of other ingredients within it. And also, we've got to remember that at the end of the day, for pre-packed for direct sale, the consumer is relying on that particular label for the information, especially for allergens. They're making a decision based on that label. Is that food safe for me to eat? So this brings us on nicely to Natasha's story, and I thought that it would be quite useful to show you a quick video that explains Natasha's story and why there's been a change in legislation and what we're heading to at the beginning of October. So if you can just bear with me for 1 second, please, and I'll try and share this with you. Okay, so hopefully the video should start playing. If you can't hear it, Ellie, could you give us a shout up, please, if it's not working?
Yeah.
Please?
Yeah, of course.
Natasha Ednan Laperouse was enjoying what she described as the best summer of her life. Heading off to Nice with a close friend and her dad, this footage captures the 15-year-old's excitement just before takeoff. The flight was 2 hours long. By the time it landed, her life was at an end. Natasha had bought a baguette from Pret-a-Manger at the airport. Having lived with food allergies since childhood, she checked the labelling, but it didn't say the dough contained sesame seeds. On the flight, she went into anaphylactic shock, and despite desperate efforts by her father, a member of the crew, and a doctor also on the flight, she had a cardiac arrest on landing. During the inquest, Natasha's family heard that because Pret makes its products on site, it doesn't have to apply full allergen information. The law was designed to help small shops, but applies to any companies producing in-house. The coroner is to write to the government about reviewing that law.
If Pret-a-Manger were following the law, then the law was playing Russian roulette with our daughter's life. It's clear that the food labelling laws, as they stand today, are not fit for purpose, and it is now time to change the law. Natasha's inquest should serve as a watershed moment to make meaningful change and to save lives. Thank you.
In court, Prepacked.
Just switch back to the presentation. Powerful words, some of the words that stood out for me there. There was no specific allergen information on the baguette packaging, and Natasha was reassured by that. The law played Russian roulette with our daughters' lives and is not fit for purpose. So, as I say, this was a situation where a sandwich was made, fell into the pre-packed for direct sale regulations, legislation, in which only the name and allergens were required. That information wasn't clear, as we'll find out very shortly. So following the very tragic circumstances in relation to Natasha, the coroner stated that the legislation wasn't adequate and requested a review. I remember one of my colleagues and I finding out that this review was going to take place and wondered what the review was going to consist of and how long it was going to take. I say this was a few years ago now. The consultation was sent out, and as you can see from the screen, a lot of individuals, businesses, public sector bodies, and non-government organisations all became involved, providing their views in relation to how allergen information should be provided. And then in June 2019, we were told by DEFRA, and they announced the plans for new legislation that was going to come into play in relation to allergens. So the key date here, that legislation is coming into force on the 1st of October this year, and I thought the best people to explain what Natashas Law is and how it affects businesses is to hear it direct from Natasha's parents themselves. So I'll just switch to the video for that. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second, please.
Hannah, the sound's not working on that video.
Okay, just bear with me 1 second. Apologies, everybody, technical difficulties. Okay, that should fix it.
Natasha's Law is really important for British society, and what it's about is about food labelling on pre-packaged for direct sale food. Sounds a bit complicated, but it's not at all. This is all relevant to food that is actually made on the premises of a particular sandwich shop, for example, and then pre-packaged before it's sold to the public. So it's a pre-packaged food for direct sale. And Natasha's Law is all about covering the labelling that relates to the ingredients of that food and also highlighting the 14 allergens on that food as well.
Natasha's Law means that all prepackaged food, whether it's made in a factory or if it's made on site, will have to include all the ingredients so that anybody looking at the label on the packaging will know exactly what they're buying, and therefore they can make a good decision as to whether or not that's safe for them.
So currently food producers who make food that are pre-packaged for direct sale on the premises don't actually have to adhere to any laws or regulations that mean they have to put any ingredients on. And that, I think, to a lot of people would be quite a shock, as it really was to us. I think it was unbelievable when we found that out. I think all our lives we've believed that whatever there needed to be said would be put on the packaging, as we see it when we buy food in a supermarket that is packaged. But it's not at all the case in sandwich shops around the country. In our family's case, Natasha bought a sandwich, or we bought a sandwich together actually at the airport, and it was pre-packaged, so it looked rather like a supermarket sandwich. And there was what I'd call partial information on it, so it gave some of the ingredients on the sandwich, but not all of it. So in many ways, we were kind of lulled into a sense of false security. And this is the big problem. When you're buying and you're moving on the go and you're buying food, you make decisions quickly. Basically, you don't lull on it and just think for hours on end about it. It's fast. And if there's information there, you read it and you take it at face value. And there's a trust element there. And in this case, that trust cost us our daughter's life. It's really important Natashas Law comes into force and those things do change so that people with allergies are properly protected, like they should be, and not second-class citizens. It's outrageous.
This is covering a law that existed that was never really meant for large chains that pre-package food, and it's really tightening it and making it safe so that ultimately it can save people's lives.
I thought that was quite a good summary, really, of Natashas Law, saying what's coming in on the 1st of October, but I will go into a little bit more detail on it now, as I know that's why we're here today. So as mentioned previously, it was the 2019 Food Information Amendment England regulations that have made the change to the current allergen law that's coming in on the 1st of October. It now makes it a legal requirement for the full ingredients labelling to be put onto pre-packed for direct sale foods. And that ingredients list now must contain the allergens within it that's within that food. Those allergens, like in pre-packed food, need to be emphasised, so that can either be colour, bolded, underlined. Generally, we'll see that it's bolded, and there'll often be a statement saying, for allergen information, please see ingredients listed in bold. This is quite a change, as I say, because previously, pre-packed for direct sale food just needed the name and the allergens on. It's now going to require the full ingredients list. Now, I appreciate that we're coming up to an hour and that we are going to slightly overrun here. Obviously, if everybody I know is very busy, if you do need to disappear, that's absolutely fine. Say if you want, we can provide copies of the presentation at a later date if you want to get in touch with us if you do need to disappear, but I will carry on for now if that's all right. So how should the ingredients list now be presented? Well, it should be the same as what's on pre-packed food. And so there's a lot of information on the Food Standards Agency website, on the Business Companion website, and also in the regulations themselves for the food information regulations on that. But as a snapshot, it needs to be headed with the word ingredients. Like I've said previously, it needs to be listed in descending order of weight. So the most prominent ingredient that's put into the recipe is at the top of the ingredients list, and the pinch of salt, the flavouring, the colouring at the bottom. Compound ingredients should be broken down. I often get asked what compound ingredients are. So, for example, if you take a sandwich, let's take a cheese and coronation chicken, a coronation chicken sandwich. It's going to be made up of the components of the bread and obviously the butter, the filling as well. So when you're listing the ingredients, you would need to break down the individual ingredients that made the bread, in addition to the ingredients that are then in the sandwich filling as well, so that every single item that makes up that final sandwich is listed. That often will mean that as a food business, if you're buying in ingredients from third parties, pastes, spice mixers, bread, pastries, any ingredients that you're buying in from third parties, you will need to be checking the labelling to see what allergen information is on there. So, as I say, the big one, allergens need to be declared within that ingredients list, and they need to be emphasised. And again, we can have the statement, for allergens, please see ingredients listed in bold. Now, we do often get asked about may contain statements. In the past, may contain statements were used by some businesses as a disclaimer, and we did often see situations where you'd see may contain followed by a list of all 14 allergens. I'll come on to may contain statements in a bit, and as I say, if anyone's looking to make free from claims such as gluten-free or dairy-free, etc., if you're wanting some advice on that, as there's a few quite detailed specifics on that, get in touch with us after the presentation, and we can help guide you through that side of things. For example, vegetable soup. So at the top, it has the name ingredients. We've got the lentils at 4.5%, as that will be they will be mentioned in the name of the food. And more importantly here, we've got a couple of ingredients listed in bold, which is your allergens. So we've got wheat flour. It's important to note here that what they've done here is they've highlighted the cereal containing the gluten as the allergen, rather than putting the word gluten. And the way they've done that there of highlighting the cereal is the correct way to do that. Many times I'll see labels that are sent through to us to have a look at, and it will just say gluten, so we do have to advise on that quite often. They've clarified that there's milk within the cream, and obviously they've put the celery on there, and we've got the statement which I mentioned for allergens, see ingredients listed in bold. Another example, a cheese and onion sandwich. Again, we've got the name of the food, we've got the ingredients, and here they've put the wheat flour, and they've broken that down. Obviously there's a number of parts that make up that wheat flour, and they've put the cereal containing the gluten there in bold. We've got the milk declared within the cheddar cheese and milk declared within the butter. So some of the common errors that we see, Stuart will agree with this, we often get food labels sent in to us to have a look over, and I thought it'd be useful to put some of the common errors down. So not breaking down the compound ingredients, not including the allergens, they're pretty high up there on the main errors that we see. Not emphasising the allergens, so the allergens need to be prominent, they need to be emphasised so that when you look at the label, somebody that is suffering with, that is living with an allergen or intolerance can clearly see which allergens are in there and can make that informed decision as to whether that item is safe for them to eat. Not listing the cereal containing gluten, forgetting about sulfite, sulfur dioxide, and sometimes not just understanding which allergens are within certain ingredients. So for example, soya is contained within tofu, sesame in tahini paste, milk in whey, celery in gravy. So it's really important that as a food business, your chefs or yourselves are checking the ingredients list of every ingredient that you're using to make your dishes or to make the product that you're going to be offering for sale, to make sure that you have a comprehensive, full, accurate, up-to-date list of the allergen information that is going to be within that final product you're serving and offering to the customer. I mentioned may contain statements, so they are allowed, but they are they're mainly allowed where you can base, it's mainly to do with cross-contamination, where you can show that that risk has been based on scientific evidence, it's been substantiated, and that as the Food Standards Agency currently say, that full risk assessment has taken place. It's not a statement to be put on there to list all 14 allergens to cover yourself. It needs to be a carefully considered statement. And the main message there is to highlight that to your customer. If a customer asks about a particular allergen, one of the ingredients you've used within a dish says the may contain on it, have that conversation with the customer. If needed, take the packaging, show them, explain to them that that paste that you've used in that dish has a may contain statement, and let the customer decide for themselves whether or not whether or not they want to proceed with ordering that food or not. It's about communication as well as the accuracy. Staff training, I mentioned it previously, very important. Regular staff training. Many times I've seen staff training records that are 5-6 years old in relation to allergens, obviously menus will have changed, suppliers will have changed, ingredients will have changed in dishes. So that staff training on your premises really does need to be kept up to date. It's also important to ensure that your staff know where to find your allergen information, whatever system it is that you have in place on there, especially when it comes to loose food and non-pre-packed food, whether that's the allergen folder, whether it's electronically available on the till, whether it's on a label, or as I say, with the pre-packed and pre-packed for direct sale, whether it's on the label or a labelling gun or a printout, making sure that the staff know that allergen information is being correctly applied to the right product. I mentioned the use of a matrix, allergen matrix folders, checking deliveries and supplier information. It's okay looking at allergens in a set ingredient that you've bought in once, but manufacturers do have a habit of changing their ingredients. They're constantly tweaking and changing that, so it is useful to regularly check your supplier information, and you're perfectly within your rights to go back to your supplier and ask them for that information if you're not sure, if it's not being supplied. I've put on the bottom there as well, there's a link to some allergen training. It's a free online allergy training course that's been devised by the Food Standards Agency. It covers various different modules, from everything from food factories to restaurants to shops, and we'd recommend all staff involved within a food business operation to have a look at do that. I think they used to provide a certificate at the end of it. I'm not sure if they still do, but as I say, we do regularly give that link out and recommend food businesses to have all staff complete that training course, as it will aid and help with your due diligence as well. So this is the Allergen Matrix that I was referring to. As I say, mainly used in your non-pre-packed loose food. Currently, before October, is used for some pre-packed for direct sale. And the way it works is that you can print off various sheets from the Food Standards Agency website of this matrix. We have where you can list your menu or your food item down the left-hand side, and you go across the 14 allergens across the top horizontally to tick which allergens are contained within that food product. It's important that we've got the review date on and who it's been reviewed by, and that's regularly updated. That may be put in a folder that staff can then refer to. It might be kept in the kitchen. You don't have to have it on display to customers, but we have had feedback from businesses that it is useful, a useful way to record, maintain, update and communicate the allergen information, and they're freely available on the Food Standards Agency's website. So some things to think about. Have you got enough information from your suppliers in relation to do you have enough information to provide accurate allergen information that you feel confident to give to your consumer? If in doubt, explain the situation to the consumer. If you're not sure, be honest with the consumer and let them make that decision. Have you thought about cross-contamination? Have you got procedures in place in your kitchen for that, especially if you're providing, for example, a free-from food, a gluten-free food, for example? Sorry, having a look to see what systems have you got in place. Are you using different utensils? Do you have a different area of the premises where those foods are made to prevent cross-contamination risk? Have you done any sampling? Human error is always, everyone's human, everybody makes mistakes, but it's about having those procedures and having that due diligence in place as a food business operator to do everything that you reasonably and practically can to ensure that you're complying with the law and to make sure that allergen information is accurately and is provided on request. Your staff training we've mentioned, and all of those things together along with the risk assessment help to form your allergen management system. If we get any inquiries or complaints, or even just on our inspections in relation to allergens on food businesses, we do ask regularly to see the allergen management system that you have in place and discuss what procedures you as a food business have, whether that's for pre-packed food, pre-packed for direct sale, or loose foods, and talk through that with you and to see how we can guide and help the best we can. So as part of devising today's webinar, the Better Business for All group also asked if we could provide an online toolkit. So we've added onto our website, Cumbria Trading Standards, a bit of a one-stop shop for allergen information, which will provide links to take you off to the relevant parts of the Food Standards Agency website, where you can find the templates, the Allergen Matrix, copies of the sign, the training, etc. And we've done it as a top 10 questions and answers. I'll just see if I can bring it up, just to give you a quick view of that. If you bear with me, please.
I have put the link in the chat as well, Hannah, so people have
access. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just bringing it up now. So hopefully, is that showing, Ellie, please?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So as I say, Ellie's put the link in the chat, so you should be able to access it there. We've got a video from the Food Standards Agency on the right-hand side, a bit more about Natashas Law, another one about food labelling, and a video of the day in the life of Chloe provided by Lancashire Trading Standards. That's a really useful and powerful video that explains the impact of living with an allergy and intolerance, and how businesses and food businesses and the actions they take impact on a consumer that's living with an allergen or tolerance. It also recaps on the requirements in relation to allergens, so I would recommend having a watch of that. A brief introduction, and we've put the top 10 allergen intolerance questions we get asked when we're out doing our inspections or engaging with businesses. So we get asked, who needs to know about allergens? Why do I need to know about them? What are the allergens? What do I need to do to comply with the law? A bit about staff training. Can you give allergen information verbally? They may contain statements. How you provide that allergen information, Natashas Law, and where I can find out more. And for each of those, they're all collapsible. So if you click, there's a drop down where it provides the relevant information for that topic. And as you can see, it provides links to the different documents that we've referred to today. So a lot of what's on there we have covered today, and some top tips in there as well. But I thought it was useful just to show you that that resource is there and is available for you to make use of. Back to the presentation. So that brings us to the end of the presentation and the content I wanted to deliver today. So Stuart, have we had any questions today? Unfortunately, I can't see the chat.
So we've got one that says, we make sandwiches and fruit and veg packs for kids, pick and mix boxes. Is this pre-packed?
Stuart, can I hand over to you on that one, please?
If you're making them up in advance and the packaging is sealed, then yes, they would be. I can't imagine there'd be certainly fruit and veg packs. I can't imagine there'd be much in there in the way of allergens. Certainly sandwiches, there'd be probably quite a lot of labelling required, unfortunately. But I mean, if you want to contact us with specific details, then obviously we're happy to look at exactly what it is you're doing.
Yeah, as I say, if it's.
Go on, Hannah.
I was just say, if it's that you're going and the consumer's picking and mixing the fruit boxes there and then at the time before they're placed in the box, then that'd be classed as loose food. Like Stuart said, it's going to be, if it's made up in advance, those boxes are made up and labelled and put to one side for the customer to go in and grab off the shelf at the same premises later on. Was there another question, Ellie?
Yeah, there was just two more. If it's okay, I'll just leave it. These two be the final ones, and then if everyone else wants to just email, obviously Hannah and Stuart on the trading standards generic email address, they can get back to you at a later date. But I'll just read these two last ones. So in regards to claims, e.g., gluten-free pizzas, would you expect total segregation in storage, prep and serving to prevent cross-contamination, especially since flour can become airborne?
Very interesting question.
Of a risk assessment. If you contact us, there is information we can supply you from Celiac UK, which is guidance for businesses. But gluten-free product can be 20 parts per million gluten and still be classed as gluten-free. We are actually doing a sampling program at the moment. So if you want to contact us, we could actually take a sample of the product for you and have it tested to see if there is any gluten in it.
And that help validate and help you understand whether your current procedures that you've got operating on the premises, how they're impacting on that gluten level. Because there is also the option of labelling as a very low gluten, which I think is less than 100 parts per million. But as I've got the email address on the screen. If you want to pop an email on, and if you put in the subject that it's for either Stuart or myself, one of us will pick it up and have that conversation with you.
Thank you, Hannah. And just finally, we sell paninis and we cover the panini in cellophane to keep them fresh. The customer cannot pick up the sandwich. We take it out of the package and cook it before giving it to them. Do we have to label the panini?
Simple answer is no.
No.
It's that's not pre-packed. You just need to have any allergen information available for the customer in case they asked, as Hannah, in whatever way you choose, as Hannah has discussed.
Brilliant.
Yeah, in that instance, it's been handed loose. It's been handed to the consumer finally as being a loose product. So as I say, as long as you can provide the allergen information if asked for by the customer in that situation, because it's been provided as loose, then you should be okay.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much to Hannah and Stuart in particular for obviously presenting. Thank you everyone for coming today. Like we said, we will have this as a YouTube link available on the Trading Standards webpage, but I'll also send it to you via email. And then any other questions, obviously the Trading Standards email address is clearly highlighted on their website as well. Thank you so much for coming, and we hope you found that informative.